welcome back to Fox Beats Fire. I'm Tom, and in this video we're going to be going over functions. And functions are usually used, I'm just going to go ahead and open up Visual Studios whilst I'm talking, but functions are used to abstract your code away from your main sort of function, where we usually program. So if you can take information out of that main function and put it somewhere else that you can just sort of call on it, that makes your code much easier to use, much easier to read, and much easier to expand on. It makes it more modular, if that means anything to you. So it means that you can, instead of having to rewrite code over and over again, whenever you need it, you just go, oh, I'll have that please, and it gives you about what you need, and it just makes your code so much more concise, much more readable. So now I've got Visual Studios open here. We're going to go ahead and create a new project. It's going to be exactly the same as usual, so .NET Core, like before in the last two videos, and you name it whatever you want. And whilst that loads, I'm just going to do nothing. Cool. Alright, so I haven't really expanded on what all this stuff there means yet. I didn't do it in the first video. I went over using statements briefly in the last video, which were, we talked about the fact that basically it just includes a library, which is sort of a big pile of functionality that you can bring into your code, and lists was the example. And we're going to go ahead and just pull in the lists using statement again because we're probably going to use it. Using systems.collect or system.collections.generic, and that'll give you access to lists. So what's a namespace? A namespace is sort of like a container for loads of code and information. Usually you'll have multiple classes within that inside C#. A class then contains all your functions and your variables, etc. And how you define these functions and variables depends how you can access them within each class. So that's kind of what they all do, and then obviously you've got your fast static void main, which is just one of your normal functions, and functions is what we're going to be going over today, as I already said. So that's your main function, and your main function, you can only have sort of one of those, and the main function is where all code starts from. So all of that code that is within your program, it will be started from the main. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over, dead simple, how to actually write a variable. Sorry, not a variable, function. That was the first video. And to write a function, what you're going to do is you're going to give it a type, just like where it says void there. I'll go over what static means in a minute, but you're going to give it a type. So we'll say int, and then we'll go, what should we call it? My_func. Not like that. That looks rubbish. My_func, and then you give it two brackets and a pair of parentheses like that. And we are going to have to, you'll see we're getting an error there. That's because we've said to it that what this means, the fact that you're giving it a type, is that that function should return an int. It should return a number. So in order to get rid of this error, we need to go return, and then we just give something a name. We'll say my number, like that. And then if we go ahead and go and create a variable called my number, without two U's, that should get rid of all of our errors there. Oh, and now we'll just make it equal to 10. Now that should get rid of all our errors. So what that's done there is we've got a function which says, my name is my_func, and I'm going to return to you an integer whenever you call me. And what it does is, when you call that function, it's going to go into my number and set that variable equal to 10, and then it's going to return my number, the number 10, or whatever else is stored in my number. Now what static means is that's to do with how you access it. So if I was now to, well, let's go ahead and have a look here. So if I go back into my main, which is where I would call all my functions from, and I type in my_func, you'll see that that brings up an error. And just for argument's sake, we'll make it equal to an int. So we'll go int return val equals my_func, because when you call that, it'll go and it'll run my_func, and it'll return the number 10, and it'll save that number to return val. But we're getting an error there, it's not working. And the reason for that is because the method isn't static. So you have to do some extra stuff to call it. Now if I was just to make it static down here, now my error will go away, and I will be able to run that code. So now if I was just to go console or write line, like this, write line, and then type in return val in, I can now control F5 to run it, and it should return the number 10. There you go, number 10. Excellent. Excellent. Alright, so what else could we do? Well, instead of returning it to an int like that, what we could do is we could just literally call my_func like that in the console.write line. So now if I was to control F5 again, it would still return 5. And that's not using this value here. That's just to show you that you can, whatever you're returning from a function, you can return that to multiple different sort of aspects of your code. You don't have to return it to a variable or anything like that. You can return it pretty much to anything. So now how do I access a access a function that's not static. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over something called, we're going to be creating an instance of an object. And where it says class program, we can create an example of this class program within our main. So if I was to go program, like so, this is kind of going into object oriented a little bit here, but that'll be next video that we go into that. So if I now go program p equals new program, new program, or like so, that we've now instantiated or created an object of program, and now we can use that object, so p dot, to call my func like that. And whenever you call a function, you have to give, I forgot to mention this, you have to give the name and then you have to give it 2 brackets. And if it's if you're not passing anything to it, which we'll go over in a minute, you don't have to put anything in those brackets. This is kind of how we are now. So you'll see that we're not getting an error there now. So because we've created an object of program, we can now call all of the non-static members within that class. And I think if we were to have variables in there, if we were to have non-static variables, it works the same. So if I just made an int called my int equals and make it 100, and that would be the same now. So if I wanted to go ahead and go console.writeLine and call my int, oh no, we can see we're going to have to go p.myint, then that will allow us to access that variable there. Now generally you won't do that. Usually you'll put your variables within functions, but sometimes you'll have those what they call global variables, which can be accessed by all your classes. Alright, so what if we want to send something to a function? I'm just going to get rid of that. Well, that's pretty easy. Where it says string args in here, what that's doing is that's passing something to your main. So if I was to go to my func and say we want to pass it another int, and we'll pass it, and we'll call that int another number, like that. When we call my func up here, we can give it a number. So within the parentheses, within the brackets, what we're going to do is we're going to type in the number 313. I don't know why, it's just the number I've decided to do. Or if you had a variable that was an integer, you could pass it the name of the variable. But we'll just pass it the number 313 for now. If I now then go into my function, and we set my number equal to another number, which is the information that's being passed in. So what it's doing is p.myfunc is calling the method, the function, and then it's sending it another number as a value, sending the value 313, it's saving that to the my number variable, and then it's returning my number to whatever we ask it to return it to in the main function. So if I go, no, we'll go console.writeLine. So if I go console.writeLine, what that will end up doing is that will just end up printing off the value 313, like that. Again, you can have as much sort of complexity, as much programming and information as you want in my func variable, so you can have some really complex stuff. So whenever you call my func, it'll do loads of calculations and return you the value. And it's very useful with things like lists, because you can have like for example, you could have a function that prints all the information out in a list. So let's say you're working with a list and you send my func a list, and what it does then is it iterates through the list and prints everything out, and then it'll go back into your main. So instead of having to do that over and over again whenever you want to print it out, you can just call my func. So it's very useful. One other thing I'm going to go over dead quick is the void. So you see static void. When it says void, that means it's not going to return anything. So there you see we're going to get another couple of errors. And that's because we don't want a return in here anymore. So if I now get rid of that, then that error will go away. And the console.writeLine cannot console.writeLine anything because nothing's being returned from my func. So instead, we have to get rid of that. And if we wanted to print something out within my func, we'd have to do the console.writeLine inside it. And then we could just print my number, like that. And then if we go ahead and call my func and send it, why is it not showing up yet? Because I'm on Muppet and I didn't put p dot my func, and then give it the number 313 again. Control F5. You see, it's still going to print off 313. It's just doing it in a different way. So that's sort of the most of the information I'm going to need to give you about functions. Now we could go over private and public in this, but because that comes up a lot in the object-oriented video, I'm going to leave that for the next video. But just to give you an example, you might have a public static void, or you could have a private static void, and there are other different examples of those words as well, but we'll just leave it at public and private for now. One other thing you can do as well, and this is kind of getting a little bit too complicated, but is you can actually pass a function as a parameter. So this is a parameter here. Int another number is a parameter, and I probably should mention that you can have multiple parameters. So you can also pass it a string and call it my string, like that, and then you could console write line my number, and you could console write line my string. Like so, and if I was now to run that, it would print off whatever it is I passed to it. But you'll see up here I've got an error, and that's because I'm only passing it one variable where I need to pass it to. So if I now pass it hello world, standard, you know, that error should now go away. It didn't. Why? Because I'm giving it a static reference. Beautiful. Right, so there you can see that I've now passed it a number and I've passed it a string. I've got rid of the static because that was wrong in the way I was trying to run the function. Because if you instantiate it with an object creation like this, then and you try and run the function like that, if there's a static in there, you're going to get an error. So I had to get rid of that. I think I put it in there as an example. Anyway, what else could you do? So I should probably show you how to do it with lists. It's basically the same, but if you haven't seen it done before, you might find it kind of tricky. So I'm going to go ahead and create another function. I'm going to call it, we're going to say, no, we'll make it return a list, like that. So if we make it return a list of string, and we're going to call the function print string, print strings, and we're going to make it accept a list of strings, like that. And we'll call it list. So we've created a function that's going to return a string. We've called the function print strings because we're going to print out all the strings in the list, and then we told it that we wanted to accept a list of strings that we can print out, and we've just called that list of strings list. So if I now create a for loop in here, hopefully you can remember how to do that. If not, go and check the other video, the previous video, should I say. And come on, type Tom. For int equals 0, while 0 is less. Sorry, not for int I. I'm spazzing out. For int I equals 0, while 0 is less than a list.length, or the list.count. Sorry, and then we're going to go I plus plus. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go console or write line, and we're going to print a list, and then give it some square brackets so we can access each item and go I. So what that's going to do is it's just going to print out every single every single string in the list that we sent it, and then all we have to do is return list. Now you can do whatever you want to the information in the list instead of just printing it out. I've just printed it out for the sake of it. But if you want to say add the letter X to every single string within the list of string, you could do that and return the list, and it return your adapted list back to your main. I'm not going to do that in this, but that you could do that. That would work, and maybe it's a good thing for you to practice and have a go at doing. So if I now try and call that, we're going to make that static, just so I don't have to use the object to create it and call it. If I now go, what's it called? Print strings like that. And I'm going to have to pass it a list of strings, so we're going to have to create a list of strings up here. And we'll go list, and we're going to go new list of strings. It should come up there, and we're going to give it the list of strings. We're going to go 1, hello, my name is Fox, like so. I'll just type in hello, my name is Fox, like so. I'm then going to send that list to the function, and we're going to control F5 that. Hello, my name is Fox. Now what if we wanted to print it out on the same line? I haven't shown you how to do that yet, and the only difference there is you have to go console.write instead of line. If you do use console.write, it's going to write it all on the same line. If you use write line, it's always going to put each thing on a new line. So if I now change this to smash the, you see where I'm going yet? Like button, and then plus, and we control F5 that. You see it prints it out on the same line, but now you see you're getting no spaces. So how would we put spaces in there? It's also given us an exception here. I don't think that was there last time, but system's out of range. So what we are also going to have to do is we are going to have to do this, and put a -1 in there. I was going to show you how to put a space in there as well. So if I was now to go like so, if I go plus and then put a space like that, after each write, what it's going to do is it's going to add a space, so before it prints the next one off, there'll be a space. So now if I control F5 again, smash the like button please, I've still got an error with my index. Why? Why do you do this to me? Oh, oh, I swear when I do these program videos, I automatically become slightly challenged mentally. That should be an I. Yeah. Yeah, good one, Tom. Great. That's why it's going out of range. Control F5, beautiful. Alright, so anyway, I hope that's cleared up some of the questions you might have had about lists. It might have been a little bit messy there. I'm going to show you this one other thing about passing a function as a parameter because I think it's interesting. I'm pretty sure it's called a lambda function. So if you're ever wondering what a lambda function is, I think it's that. And what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a function here and we're going to go, not hashtag, come on. We're going to go and we're going to return an int. I'm going to call this function. I'm going to make it static as well, actually, so I don't have to instantiate any objects or anything. Static int, and we're going to call it add nums. And we're going to tell it that we want it to take int and then 1. That's not the actual number, that's just the name for the number, so on integer 2, or like so. Then what we're going to do is we're going to return 1 plus 2, or like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go and create another static int. And we're going to call it, we're going to call it times nums, like so. And we're going to go int 1 and int 2 again. This is just a little trick, you know, I don't use lambda functions very often, and I don't come across them much even when I'm working, so it's just kind of a cool, interesting thing I'm adding on to the end here. And this is going to return, again, it's going to return 1 times 2. Now, what I can do is I can, I hope you're ready for this, I can call times nums, and what I can then do is I can pass add nums, and then give it the values of 5 and 10, and then we can give it the value of 10 there. And what that's going to do is that's going to call add nums and return the value and save that as the parameter. So if I go Control F5, it should, I should probably work this out. So it's going to add 5 to 10, and it's going to be 15, and it's going to times 15 by 10, so it should be 150. So if I console outline that. I don't like my keyboard. I need to get a new keyboard. This one's irritating. Go. 150. It worked. So that's what a lambda function is. I'm pretty sure that's what a lambda function is. Anyway, so yeah, another interesting trick that you can maybe use in some of your programming to you know, improve, I suppose. But yeah, so that's functions in general. Sorry if the video is a little bit messy. I've made a few mistakes, and I always seem to make some stupid mistakes whenever I do these programming videos. But you know, I'm not perfect, but I do like coding. So thank you very much for watching, and the next video is going to be doing object-oriented programming. So that's where it really starts to get interesting. The functions, object-oriented programming, recursion. Now we're getting into the cool stuff, the interesting stuff, and the tricky stuff. So keep watching. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Feel free to smash that like button, and I'll see you next time.